clear blue sky of an intensity we haven't seen for weeks. Just a few wisps and tails of white cloud low down on the horizon to the south and west. A nippy little breeze brushes the flat sea into a field of 1,000 glittering, dancing stars. There seems to be excitement and anticipation in the air as the year turns. So we might as well pop in and get a cup of tea to calm us down. Hello, I'm Peter John Cooper. As the year turns on, it's a good time to look back over the seasons. And today's story takes us back to the long, hot days of summer, not so long ago. It's called Malcolm's Marvellous Ice Creams. There is only one small thing wrong with the West Cliff. I mean, when you're lounging on the short grass on a hot day and you've found a space with some shade under one of the old and wind-twisted pines, all you can think of is an ice cream. But the ice cream kiosks are all down at the bottom of the cliff, and by the time you have made your way down, bought a cone and climbed all the way back up the 127 steps, your ice cream will have melted all over your hand and down your t-shirt and is no more than a fading dream or a distant memory. To add insult to injury, there's usually an ice cream boat that scurries along, stopping every so often along the shoreline to broadcast its presence through very loud speakers, so that we're all made acutely aware of just what we are missing. And so often and so regularly that we become like Pavlov's dogs, salivating at the very sound. Now, the one thing lacking on the West Cliff Green is an ice cream sales outlet. Until someone has the very bright idea of getting hold of one of those old-fashioned ice cream sales tricycles, you know, the sort of thing that used to trundle around the streets. A tricycle with a big refrigerated compartment on the front and a little bell that the salesperson would ring loudly, and a large notice somewhere saying, "Stop me and buy one." No, you don't remember them? Gone the way of the truck that used to sell Corona lemonade and Tizer in glass bottles that you could sell back for threepence. I suppose Corona sales would have diminished through the name alone had they not gone out of business 20 years ago. And then, as if by magic, one long hot summer, someone did have the idea, obtained one of those tricycles from goodness knows where, and painted it up a bright, mouth-watering orange, complete with the bell and the sign saying, "Stop me and buy one." And that summer he did a roaring trade. No more than that. It was a particularly hot summer, as I recall. Day after day of sun scorching down from an unsullied blue sky. And Malcolm, well, it said Malcolm's Ice Creams on the side, so I'm willing to guess that was his name. Malcolm did extremely well. Of course, he could only provide a limited range of tubs and lollies from his little refrigerated box, but we didn't care. and as the hot days continued, lines of people would form as soon as his little bell was heard. But as the summer and the heat dragged on, the crowds became less organised and, frankly, a little unruly. And then Malcolm would stand and hold up his arms and admonish the crowd for their behaviour. And there was something in his demeanour that made them fall back, and he would say, "Let those at the back of the crowd have a turn, seeing that they're mostly old and frail." One day, one of the homeless people climbed a tree that overhung the path, and people shouted at him to get down, but Malcolm said, "He is just as hot as any of the rest of you," and gave him a lolly for free. And whenever he saw there were children in the crowd, he would motion them to the front of the press and make sure they were served first. Malcolm's slogan was, "Just take care of each other. That's what we're here for." And he would call it out whenever the crowd got too great. One of Malcolm's most regular customers was a chap called Clive, who was clearly on holiday from London. He wore sharply cut sportswear and trainers to die for. He always appeared when we heard Malcolm's bell and would stand there watching the crowd. And when the ice creams and lollies were all gone, he would go and talk to Malcolm, touching him on the arm as if they were long-lost buddies. And although Malcolm didn't know him from Adam, he was as happy discussing his simple philosophy as much as he was at ease talking to the homeless people under the trees. And then, one day, towards the end of his stay, Clive took Malcolm by the arm and said, "Look, I'm a business investor. I think you could do well with this tricycle thing if you were to franchise the idea out. Let's go 50-50 and I could make you a lot of money. Of course, you'd have to tighten up your business practices first. No more free lollies for the kiddies." Malcolm felt a shiver run down his spine and realised his days were numbered. And when he next appeared on the West Cliff and a great crowd assembled, he saw that Clive was not among them, and he stood up and said, "I shall soon be going away. This is to be my last round." And a great groan went up from the crowd. "I want you to remember that men and women and children cannot live by ice cream alone." And he began handing out his stock for free. "Here, have this ice cream on me. Hope it brings back happy memories." And that day, the lollies and tubs did not run out, and everyone who wanted one got one. But then, at that moment, there was a commotion at the back of the crowd, and a number of policemen shouldered their way through. At their head was Clive. He went up and put his hand on Malcolm's arm and said, "Sorry, old chum, but business is business." And the police sergeant said, "Malcolm, I have reason to believe that you have been supplying drugs to minors." And the crowd gasped and fell back because, of course, they knew that's just how ice cream men earned their money, and they instantly assumed he must be guilty. "What's more, you have been trading without a council licence, as well as there being any number of questions relating to health and safety issues that you may be able to help us with. I would ask you to accompany me to the police station. And the crowd all turned away, and Malcolm was forced to push his tricycle all the way to the police station by himself, although it is said a local drug dealer called Simon helped him up the steepest part. And the way the crowd remembered him was by throwing down their tubs and lollies in disgust, and the next morning the cleaners picked up 7 bin bags full of cartons and lolly sticks. But there were many who did not believe in Malcolm's guilt. He was a good and generous man, and they believed he had been set up. And every year they would return and inquire if Malcolm was coming back. But he never did, and his summer of ice cream disappeared into a golden, sun-haloed folklore. Some said that Clive was awarded franchises to supply ice creams by tricycle, and he made a lot of money before he died. But in later life he became overwhelmed by sorrow for what had happened to Malcolm, and bequeathed all his money to a children's charity. In any case, he never returned to Bournemouth, and there has never been another ice cream tricycle seen on the West Cliff to this day. Well, thank you for listening to that story. If you come and visit next year, who knows, but Malcolm might return with his tricycle and frozen treats. We'll carry on waiting and hoping and listening out for that tinkling bell. If you've ever been traumatised by the lack of ice cream, it would help me enormously if you could put a like on my channel, and if you subscribe, you'll be reminded when a new story is uploaded. See you next week.